They walked onto the AGT stage holding each other's hands, two identical Filipino twins with the warmest smiles but eyes that showed years of being misunderstood. Before they even introduced themselves, the entire audience whispered among themselves. People could see immediately that something was different about these young boys. Their steps were gentle, their movements slightly uncoordinated, and their faces carried the unmistakable traits of Down syndrome. But what nobody in the massive auditorium expected was that these twins were about to completely transform the room, break every assumption, and push Simon Cowell to a rare emotional moment that the internet would talk about for years. Nobody knew that by the end of their performance, the entire panel would be in tears and Simon's hand would slam down on the golden buzzer. If anyone ever doubted what true talent looks like, these boys were about to give them the answer. The twins stood in the center of the brightly lit stage, the AGT logo shining above them as thousands of cameras turned toward them. They were wearing matching shirts, simple white with the flag of the Philippines embroidered on one sleeve. Their hair was neatly combed, but you could tell their mother had lovingly fussed over them backstage. They held onto each other as if the world was too big, too loud, too unpredictable, and the only certainty they had was each other. One of the twins slowly raised the microphone. His hands shook slightly, and his brother gently touched his shoulder to help steady him. The audience instantly quieted. Even Simon leaned forward, sensing this moment needed silence and empathy more than anything else. They introduced themselves softly, barely above the sound of their own breathing. They said they were from Manila, that they were 16 years old, and that they had dreamed for years of standing on this exact stage. Their mother, watching from backstage with trembling hands, whispered a prayer under her breath. The twins explained they had practiced together every day, helping each other memorize every lyric, every breath, every harmony. The judges smiled warmly, but there was also a sense of curiosity. Could these gentle, nervous, trembling teenagers really deliver something powerful? Nobody knew yet, but they were about to find out. When the music began, the entire room froze. It was the opening of a classic emotional ballad, the kind that demands precision, depth, and soul. A song most adults would avoid because of its difficulty. The fact that these two boys chose it showed either bravery or innocence. But then the first note left their mouths, and the audience gasped. Their voices were pure, clear, and unbelievably synchronized. One twin sang the main melody with aching emotion, while the other added perfect harmony, wrapping their sound around each other like the two halves of a single heart. It wasn't just singing, it was love in musical form. Their voices weren't flawless in the traditional technical sense, but they carried something far more powerful. Honesty, vulnerability, the unmistakable purity that comes from two souls who have lived their entire lives fighting labels, limitations, and assumptions. Every note felt like a message, a cry, a declaration that they were more than their condition. More than their diagnosis, more than anyone had ever allowed them to be. As they continued, the crowd slowly rose to their feet. People weren't cheering, they were absorbing. Tears rolled silently down cheeks. Parents in the audience who had children with disabilities held their hearts. Even those who didn't personally know what Down syndrome looked like felt the emotion instantly. The judges were stunned. Heidi placed her hand over her mouth. Sophia whispered something in Spanish under her breath, overwhelmed. Howie stared in disbelief. And Simon, the toughest critic on AGT history, did something almost nobody ever sees him do so early in a performance. He wiped his eyes. The song built into its emotional chorus, and the twins poured everything they had into it. One twin squeezed the other's hand mid-note, giving him confidence, giving him strength, giving him love. They had always been each other's safe place in a world that sometimes wasn't kind to people who looked or acted differently. But here, on the biggest stage in the world was finally listening. Finally seeing them without judgment. Finally understanding who they truly were. When they hit the high note, the crowd erupted. People clapped, cried, screamed, and cheered. Even the production crew backstage was emotional. Their mother collapsed into tears, her hands covering her mouth as she watched her sons shine in a place she never imagined they would stand. The song ended with the twins hugging each other tightly, both crying softly. They weren't crying because of fear. They were crying because they had finally done it. They had sung on the stage they had watched on TV since they were children. They had made it. The auditorium exploded into a standing ovation. It wasn't polite applause, it was thunder, waves of sound crashing from the upper seats to the judges' table. The applause went on so long that the twins looked confused, not understanding how deeply they had touched the audience. They only saw the smiles, the tears, and the love pouring toward them like a tidal wave of acceptance. Simon leaned back in his chair, stunned. He tried to speak but paused instead. He took a deep breath and looked at the twins with a softness almost nobody has seen from him. He said he had watched thousands of singing duos over the years, but there was something unexplainable, something magical, something truly rare about what the twins had just done. He said they didn't just sing a song, they delivered a message that the world desperately needed. A message about love, unity, and seeing people for who they really are, not for what society labels them as. He said their voices weren't just harmonizing, their hearts were harmonizing. He said they reminded everyone in the room that talent comes in many forms, and sometimes the strongest voices come from those the world underestimates. The twins listened quietly, smiling shyly. One of them held the other's hand tightly, still overwhelmed. Their mother stood backstage crying loudly now, unable to hold back the flood of emotion. Sophia said their performance felt like a hug, that it wrapped around everyone watching. She thanked them for being brave enough to come to America, step on a massive stage, and share something so personal. Heidi said their unity was beautiful and their voices blended like a miracle. Howie said they were the definition of courage and heart. But then it was Simon's turn again, and the entire room sensed something big was coming. Simon stood up slowly, pushed his chair back, and stared at the golden buzzer in front of him. The audience screamed instantly. The twins gasped, their hands flying to their mouths. Their mother fell to her knees backstage. Simon told them that sometimes, once in a very long time, someone comes on AGT who reminds you what the show is truly about. Not perfection, not fame, not strategy, but heart, humanity, hope. He said that their performance was one of the most moving things he had seen in years. And before anyone could blink, his hand slammed down onto the golden buzzer with force. Gold confetti exploded into the air and rained down on the twins like sunlight made solid. The audience screamed even louder. The twins cried openly now as they hugged each other, shaking with disbelief. The confetti clung to their hair, their shirts, their shoulders. They looked up at the sky of golden paper falling around them as if heaven itself had opened above the stage. Their mother rushed out onto the stage, crying harder than ever, throwing her arms around her sons in the middle of the confetti storm. Simon walked onto the stage himself, something he rarely does, and he hugged the twins too. He told them how proud he was, how honored he felt to witness this moment, and how the world needed to hear them. Needed to feel their message. Needed to see them shine. The audience didn't stop applauding. Even long after the golden buzzer music finished playing, people were still standing. Some were clapping, some were crying, some were hugging strangers, and in that moment, nobody in the room was thinking about differences or disabilities. They were thinking about love, courage, and the beauty of the human spirit. The twins waved to the audience with trembling hands, still overwhelmed by everything happening around them. Their mother kissed their foreheads repeatedly, thanking God under her breath. The judges continued smiling, soaking in the moment, knowing they had witnessed something that would go viral worldwide. After they left the stage, the backstage crew hugged them one by one. The twins were still crying, still shaking, still unable to process that Simon Cowell, the hardest judge in the world, had just given them the most powerful honor on AGT. Their mother kept telling them they were brave, that they had made the Philippines proud, that they had shown the world the power of love and unity. People backstage whispered that this would be the performance the world would remember. Comment sections online instantly exploded. Clips of their performance spread across every platform. Millions watched, cried, shared, and said the same thing. These twins were a reminder that talent, heart, and beauty exist in places people often overlook. And sometimes the greatest voices belong to those who have faced the greatest challenges. When the episode aired, viewers across the globe were stunned. Families gathered around screens in Manila, cheering and crying together. Filipino parents of children with Down syndrome held their kids tighter. Teachers shared the clip with students. Organizations that supported people with special needs began posting messages about how these boys were breaking barriers and rewriting narratives. The twins themselves became icons. Not because they sought fame, but because their performance radiated something real. Genuine innocence and absolute emotional truth. Their story reminded people that representation matters. That love wins. That talent doesn't need perfection to change lives. As they prepared for the semifinals, their confidence grew. They practiced every day, not just to impress judges, but because singing made them feel alive. They laughed when one of them missed a note. They helped each other memorize lyrics. They ate merienda during breaks and joked around with staff. Everyone backstage loved them. They brought sunshine into every room they entered. When the semifinals arrived, their performance was even stronger. They sang a Filipino classic, blending English and Tagalog lines, creating a global moment of cultural pride. The audience once again rose to their feet long before the song ended. The judges praised them even more deeply. Online, fans argued passionately that the twins deserved to win the entire season. By the time the finals rolled around, they were not just contestants. They were symbols. Symbols of courage, symbols of love, symbols of breaking stereotypes. Their story became part of conversations about inclusion and representation. Across the Philippines, newspapers printed their photos on front pages. Teachers told their students to watch their videos. Hospitals caring for children with special needs celebrated them as heroes. Even people who never watched AGT began watching because of them. Their final performance was breathtaking. The stage was dark except for two spotlights. They held each other's hands again, as they always did before singing. Their voices were stronger, more confident, more emotionally overwhelming than ever. They dedicated the performance to every child in the world with Down syndrome. And when they sang their final note, the room shook with applause. Whether they won the season or not didn't matter anymore. They had already won the world. They had already changed it. Their journey on AGT became one of the most emotional arcs the show had ever seen. Fans still replay their golden buzzer moment, especially when they need inspiration or comfort. People continue to write comments saying the twins gave them strength, made them believe again, or helped them see beauty where they once overlooked it. And if you look at the clip closely, right when the confetti starts falling and Simon walks toward them, you can see the exact second he realizes he didn't just press the golden buzzer for a performance. He pressed it for a message that millions needed to hear. A message the twins carried effortlessly without even trying. Love has no limits, talent has no boundaries, and every person, no matter who they are or what the world calls them, deserves a chance to shine. And the Filipino Down Syndrome twins from Manila did more than shine. They lit up the world.